Hi Chris, in your vision that you outlined, I noticed that there was not one mention of First Nations people and our sovereign owners of the land. So if Labor are elected, will they take on the recommendation of the voice co-design process, or will they reset and start again? And if they do reset, how can you guarantee to be in a position to go to a referendum in the next 3-year term with a thought-out, consulted process led by our First Nations Australians that's built for success?
Chris Bowen, hold that thought, because I want to go to Megan Davis first, and it's one of the authors of the Uluru Statement. Are Indigenous people being let down by all sides of Parliament?
Look, I think the past Parliament has been relatively productive, Stan. I mean, there was a parliamentary inquiry that said before you could go to a referendum on the Uluru Statement from the Heart and the Voice to Parliament, you needed to put meat on the bones of what that looked like. And then the Morrison government set aside, $7 million to design that, and they put aside $160 million to run a referendum, which sits in the contingency reserve. And then Minister Wyatt, not Mr Wyatt, over the course of the pandemic years has, constituted a co-design group who have handed down their submission, but it's important their report. But it's important to note that 90% of the submissions to the Wyatt co-design process said that you need a referendum. You need to set up the voice to Parliament first before you actually legislate on what it looks like, which I think is really plausible when we're talking about legitimacy and trust in institutions. You need to have First Nations people designing that. So Ken himself has said there's another process to go, right? Most mob have not read that report. But in that period, we would say, and certainly we were at Yarrabah on the weekend, Stan, and issued a statement to the Australian people, again saying that enough work has been done in the last term of Parliament, including the work of First Nations peoples and the Uluru leadership, to get the nation to a referendum in the next term of Parliament. So we have
and just on
the
that,
amendment.
Megan, sorry, just on that, you nominated 2 dates. What were they?
So we nominated, there are a number of dates actually, a number of really propitious or favourable dates, Stan. So there's about 4, but we singled out 2 in the communique. So there is the next year's, the 56th anniversary of the 1967 referendum, and so that falls on May 27, 2023. And then the following year is a date that falls the day after Invasion Day / Australia Day. And so there's actually 4 significant dates that we've said that we think the Australian people should think about when we're starting to visualise a referendum.
Let's take those 2 dates. Will you commit to either of those dates right now, Chris Bowen?
No, I will not commit to either of those 2 dates right now, because there's a process to proceed. To answer Michael's question, it will be an absolutely essential priority for an incoming Labor government should we be elected. For us, it is iconic. We are, of course, standing on the giants of shoulders. It would be equivalent to Gough sifting the soil into the hands of Vincent Lingiari and Kevin apologising. This has to happen. So we are absolutely dedicated to doing it. But we're also dedicated to getting it right. We would convene the delegates to the Uluru Statement again in the early days of a government to map out with them, not us dictating, to map out with them the way forward. That's very important. It is not up to us to dictate. We must work with First Nations to make this a reality. We must also ensure we win, frankly, the referendum.
So if you didn't think you could carry it, would you put it off?
No, with respect, Stan, I wouldn't put it that way. We want to see it happen. We want to see bipartisanship. And, I give credit to Andrew and his leadership here. He has been a very strong voice on his side of politics, and that should be acknowledged. But he's not in the majority in his party, but we should give him more assistance and recognise his work. But we need bipartisanship. Only 8 referenda have passed, none without bipartisan support in all our life.
And a long time since the last.
Absolutely. So it's
a very long time.
And it's unthinkable that we would put it to the people and lose. Unthinkable. So I would rather, to answer your question, Stan, I'd rather put it to the people and win in the second half of the term than put it to the people and lose in the first half.
So it won't be in either of those dates nominated by Megan Davis?
It's not my place to commit to a date tonight, Stan. It is not my place. That is the place of consulting with First Nations people, with the delegates to the Uluru Statement, working with them. I must say, I was extremely disappointed to see Adam Bandt's speech this week, which put the voice off into the never never and just dictated that that's the way it's going to be. That is not the way this country has worked that way for too long. The Uluru Statement of the Heart was a very special moment. A week after the election will be the 5th anniversary. We've frankly while we've made some progress, we haven't made anywhere near enough. The time is now to get on with it. We will get on with it.
Just quickly, Megan, are you happy with that answer? It's not going to happen on either of those two priority dates.
Sorry, Stan, I didn't say it's not going to happen. I said it's not my place to commit
more
to
likely
that.
in the second half
to go through.
More likely in the second half.
There's a process to work with those.
Are you happy with that, Megan?
Well, so Stan, we suggested some dates. What we wanted to say was, you know, it's been 16 years since Howard kicked this off. It's been 11 years since the Gillard expert panel. We've had 10 reports, 7 processes, and it's 5 years since the Uluru Statement from the Heart. What we know from constitutional law and experts is that there's no precondition to, in this day and age, to a successful referendum. And that's because, as you said, Stan, the last successful referendum was a very long time ago, over 40 years, and there was no social media. And what we're told from electoral experts is all of that data is bad data. So it's not so much bipartisanship, because what experts say today is that Australia's level of trust in politicians and public institutions is so low, you're likely to have in the future a referendum where both sides support and Australians vote no, right? So it's not about bipartisanship so much as the way it is framed and what it's about. And we say, after 5 years of polling since we issued that invitation to the Australian people, the polling clearly shows, you know, Crosby Textor, Accenture, the Australian Constitutional Values Survey, you name it, that a majority of Australian people would vote yes.
OK. Andrew Bragg, you have written about this, you put a book out, you've disagreed with the position of your party in terms of the pace of this and also enshrining it in the Constitution, not just legislating it. Why is it so difficult to bring your party with you on your position?
Well, I think the Uluru Statement is a real gift to our nation, and I want to acknowledge Megan's work and all the work that's gone into bringing together what is a very unifying agenda for our country. I think over the course of this term, Ken Wyatt has delivered the meat on the bones on The Voice. We now know how it would work at a local and at a regional level, at a national level. And the missing piece here is the constitutional amendment. And you
believe critically here that legislation is not just enough, but it should be enshrined in the Constitution.
Correct.
As set out in the Uluru Statement.
Correct. And we must keep faith with the Uluru Statement, and there must be a proper analysis which is run by Indigenous people principally about what sort of amendments would be adequate to deliver that agency and that agenda from Uluru. And I think we can achieve that within 18 months. I've always liked the idea of trying to improve the general debate around Australia Day. I do think that the 27th of January 2024 is a target we should try and set sail for.
Kate, in terms of where people are in rural, Megan made the point that that there is, according to the polling, widespread support. We've seen that before with things like the Republican issue. When it comes to a referendum, when you look at a model and when you look at the political contest of that model, it is so much more difficult because of the double jeopardy. You need to get a majority in a majority of states. Do you believe that that is possible? What are you picking up from where you sit?
From my experience and from out where I live, so we've had a few really tough years with water along the Darling-Barker River system, mass fish kills, dry riverbeds. The one thing that's come out of that has been the uniting of the Barkinji people out our way and white people. And it has been the most incredible experience for me to actually learn and grow, be taught by Aboriginal people. I really see it as just such a gift, and the statement from the heart is like just so incredible. I feel so privileged to be sitting up on stage with you here virtually. But like I see it our way, the relationship that happens between, you know, our traditional owners and the people out our way, it's really special. And I just, any way that I can support it and the people out our way can support it is, yeah, it's heartwarming.
Oscar, I want to come to you in just a moment, but I just want to clarify one thing, Megan, because one of the criticisms here has been that there is a difference between legislating something and enshrining it in the Constitution, and that this is the criticism that putting race into the Constitution, recognising people on the basis of race, is a violation of democratic principles in Australia, where you should not have that in the Constitution. What do you say to that argument?
Well, it's not recognition on the basis of race, it's recognition on the basis of culture. And that's what the First Nations voice is about. And there's many ways in which the Australian legal system recognises Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture, First Nations culture, Native Title Act for one, statutory land rights. So it's not a provision that recognises race. It recognises culture, and that these cultures, the descendants of the ancient polities for over 70,000 years, still exist here, and that we as a nation take pride in that, want to recognise that, and provide a place for our people at the table when laws and policies are made about their lives. It's a very, very modest ask.
Osher.
I'm quite emotional about this, Stan, because I know that we need to have a referendum to change our constitution. I appreciate that is the legality of it. To be asked to vote whether someone's humanity is legitimate, a person who is descended from the people who were here before the colonial oppressors took over, and we're asking them to sit while we debate if their humanity and their reason to exist and their dignity is worth writing down. And it appalls me that that's what it has to be. And I think about everyone in this room. It does, though. Like, I'm sorry, but it just reeks of just like a old school oppressive colonial bullshit. Like I'm being paid in rum or something. Like it just like.
So you wouldn't
with,
feel comfortable voting in a referendum? Is that what you're saying?
I'm disgusted that you'll be asked to vote on it. Like, we all have everyone in this room knows someone in the LGBT community. We all saw what they went through during the marriage equality. Like, how dare we ask these people who, it's their land, man. And
Stan,
everything we've got...
If I can jump in there.
Go.
No, I just wanted to say there is some agency here in that, by about 2015, there was a deep concern in the community that community hadn't contributed to what this recognition looked like. So the point you're making is an important one. Because in any recognition exercise and anywhere in the world, there's the recogniser, the Australian people, and there's the to be recognised. And that's precisely why Kirsty Parker and Patrick Dodson and Noel Pearson and me and others went to Tony Abbott in middle 2015 and said, you need another process. You need another process so mob can contribute to what recognition might look like. And look, recognition is a really complex legal and political thing. It can be something really minor, like acknowledgement, which is the dictionary meaning. But at the other end of the spectrum, it can mean really substantive reform, like treaties and agreements, like, regional arrangements like Nunavut, like a voice to parliament, like the Sami parliaments. And so that's the exercise we undertook through the constitutional deliberative dialogues, the first of their kind ever. Like, our people have never been asked to participate in constitution building in this country. And we took a sample of our people in a number of regions and walked them through a really complex, difficult civics and legal exercise, and these were people from communities. They weren't people who have a voice. That was a really threshold thing. Do you have a voice? If not, then you can participate in this process. The land councils helped us run it. And then Turnbull and Shorten signed off on a number of provisions that might go in the Constitution, but we did request voice to Parliament and treaty. They're the two things that we requested and went out. And so as a consequence of all that work, the final kind of priority that people said might be meaningful recognition to them was a voice to Parliament. Was for people to hear their voice, because the sense of powerlessness and voicelessness in communities is palpable. And Australians can see that. They know that. They saw the first iteration of Close the Gap fail. They see the next iteration failing. They can see the stats coming out in newspapers already. So we know that something's really wrong, and that Parliament and the bureaucracy can't do this, and that our people have to do this. And that's what this reform is about. It's one reform. It's not the only thing that we want to do, but it's one small commitment from the Australian people that says, actually, yeah, there'll be better laws and policies if you guys are at the table.